yeah. We ready to dive into this?
Yes, Roger.
Let's do it.
Steve Rogers.
Yes. Let's get at it, guys. It's Marvel!
The General Geekery Podcast presents March Marvel Madness!
Yes, indeed.
It's another thematic month.
Yep, indeed. Like, I shouted that out because I'm going to be adding in... That's going to be the transition into the theme.
Oh, okay, cool.
For the month.
Cool.
I should have...
Calling this March Marvel Madness?
Yes.
Awesome.
Or Marvel March Madness, either or.
Marvel March Madness or Madness Marvel March.
Madness
March Marvel.
This is madness. Ay, caramba. Anyway.
Do I astonish you?
You astonish me every single day, Hannah.
Do I amaze you?
Yes. How many times do I have to say this? Yes.
Okay.
Anyway, what's going on, ladies, gentlemen, all you wonderful listeners out there? Welcome back to the General Geekery Podcast.
Woo!
Indeed. This is the podcast where we geek out about all that we love to geek out about with no remorse, no regrets, and with all of the enthusiasm in the world.
Indeed.
As always, we are your hosts of the General Geekery Podcast. As always, I am Donald Kaczynski, your resident coffee ninja by day, actor, gamer, streamer by night. And to my right, she is the dice slinger extraordinaire, artiste magnificent, the wonderful and witty Hannah Kubiak.
Hello.
And as you guys can tell, welcome to the very first installment of Marvel March Madness. So we decided on doing a few more theme months for this year. Of course, we're going to be bringing back something special next month. Spoiler alert! But we figured for March...
Planet of the Apes, April.
We might have to do that for August, possibly.
Do we have enough to say about Planet of the Apes, is my question.
Yes, actually.
Really?
I'll explain later.
Okay.
But we decided we probably go after one of the biggest franchises ever, Marvel.
Yeah.
Of course, Marvel Comics is one of the two big comic book companies out there aside from DC. And there are many different great things behind Marvel, but for this month, we want to focus on the cinematic experience that has pretty much captured the world by storm and has pretty much changed comic book movies forever. Have a big hand in changing them forever. The Marvel Cinematic Universe. Throughout this month, we're going to be going through each of the phases of the MCU. And then for our last episode, we will be offering our opinions on and reactions on one of the most recent projects that came out. For those that already know what it is, stay tuned at the end of the month for that. So first
I just remembered what it is we're doing. I looked and I was like, there's only 3 phases. What's going to happen? We talked about this, but I don't remember.
Don't worry, it's okay.
Gosh, where is my mind?
Currently sipping on the beautiful cup of tea.
Yes, it's nice.
Indeed. So, let's start off with Marvel's Phase 1. Now, when this originally came about, it wasn't all under one roof with the same production company doing everything. There were multiple different studios doing Marvel films around this time, which eventually led to the very first Avengers team-up. And it was an ambitious crossover for its time. Like, nothing to this caliber had been done. Mm-hmm. So, it started off with, hold on, I will get the official MCU timeline out in front of me, just so I make sure I have my facts straight.
We're talking about it all in order of release?
In order of release.
Yes, okay, cool.
It just makes everything much easier to pinpoint. So the MCU officially started on May 2nd, 2008, with the release of the first Iron Man film, directed by Jon Favreau, who we all know is also the main head lead for the current Mandalorian series on Disney+. Who he also plays an acting credit in the MCU as Happy Hogan, Tony Stark's
what?
chauffeur.
That's him?
That's Jon Favreau.
I had no idea.
I didn't know about it too until I actually started watching it more, and I'm like, oh my god, that is Jon Favreau.
Oh.
Just incredible. And then approximately the month afterwards came the Incredible Hulk.
Oh, okay. And that's the
That's
the Edward Norton one.
Yes,
right?
that's
okay.
the Edward Norton one. The one that's basically retconned out of most of the continuation of Marvel.
I have never seen it, honestly.
And then after that, there's about a 2-year gap between Incredible Hulk and the next film, which is Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
Which serves as a follow-up to the first Iron Man. A year after that, we got the first Thor film, which really started taking off. And then a few months after Thor, we got Captain America: The First Avenger. And about a year later, we got the very first Avengers film, which changed everything. So we'll go by each of the films. So I had not seen any of these films in theaters aside from the very first Iron Man and the Avengers. I wasn't as into superhero films at the time. Like this was around like a really dark point like in my life. Like end of middle school, early high school was really rough for me.
Oh,
so
terrible time. Those were dark times indeed.
So I didn't have really the drive or the fortitude to really go out and see movies.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to see any of them until a few years later when Phase 2 was currently going through, and I met up with people who would become my lifelong friends. Yeah. And they guided me down this path. Yeah. And I saw them.
Look here, what was the first one that I saw in theaters?
Or just saw in general.
Or saw in general?
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be in theaters.
Oh my goodness! I mean,
I'm not gonna hold that against anyone if the first time you never saw MCU film was in theaters.
Okay,
because everybody jumps on board at different points.
I think that I have seen most of these movies, but some of them were a very, very long time ago. Like I know that I've seen Iron Man, and but I don't even know if I've seen 2 and 3 because it's all mixed up together. Right. All the Iron Man movies because it was that long ago. So I think those were probably the first ones that I saw. The first movie I saw the first one that I saw in theaters, I think, was actually Doctor Strange.
Oh, so you started seeing them in theaters around Phase 3 time.
Yeah, because that was about... Let me see. Guardians of the Galaxy, I actually saw just the very, very end of that movie at a drive-in theater because we went to see a different movie, some college friends of mine and we did not like the movie we were watching, so we just walked over to see the end of Guardians of the Galaxy. So it was weird because it was literally at the very end when they all grab each other's hands with the stone or whatever. Nice. And his mom appeared or whatever, and there was that whole callback to the beginning. And I was watching it and I was like, who's that bald lady? And my friend Phil was like, be quiet, that's his mom, she died. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. Fair enough. But yeah, the ones, funny thing, I actually saw Thor: Dark World before I saw
the first one?
The first one.
Oh, you must have been incredibly confused then.
I was so confused.
All right, so I'll take you through the timeline.
Yeah,
of
let's
this.
go through. Let's go
Of
through
course,
phase one.
first Iron Man. First of all, Robert Downey Jr. Like I cannot stress this enough. Numerous amount of people have said it. He's pretty much him and Jon Favreau are the two people responsible for basically building the MCU on their backs. Mm-hmm. Because if they did not hit this out of the park the first time around, we would not have the MCU as it has been today.
Yeah.
I mean, even on my personal Twitch channel, I've done an entire ranking list of how I ranked all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films. Mm-hmm. And I put the first Iron Man in the top 10.
Yeah.
Even all these years, it's been nearly 13 years since that film was released, and it's still amazing. Like, to watch and behold. Just, the brevity of Downey Jr.'s acting as this pompous playboy billionaire, but still taking like the gravity of like the situation that he is basically caused and is confronting, because his particular dealing with the PTSD of what happened with him when he got the shrapnel in his system, and he's basically put a battery into his body in order to basically live, and dismantling like the weapons that he has created to basically just rebuild and take responsibility and own up to that.
Yeah.
It's still a hell of a film.
Yeah.
I love it.
I remember that part. I remember the very beginning. And then after that, I get all mixed up about what happened.
The scene that always plays in my head all the time is when he's testing out the suit, and it's the first Mark suit where it's all silver, and he just decides, you know what, screw safety protocols, I'm going to do a test flight, and you just see him flying over the sea in California, and you just see the music in the background. I rewatched that before we started recording, and I'm like, I still get chills from this scene.
I remember there was something where, like, he was, like, all the robots were, like, taking the bits of the armor off of him, he's just there, and then,
Pepper?
What's her name? Pepper. I was gonna say Piper. No. Pepper, like, walks in and he says something like, I can explain.
Yep. I know exactly what you're saying. He's like, let's face it, this is not the most awkward thing that you've caught me doing.
Yeah. Okay, I knew it was something like that. Like some sort of euphemism.
It was so good, but also deadly serious when she asked her those bullet holes. I'm like, That's
what you noticed. That's a good friend.
That's the kind of serious wit and charm that these movies portray to the front.
Yeah.
And it also helped like establish like the long-lasting relationship between Pepper and Tony, which of course is like the first romance we get in the MCU.
Yeah.
Which, as much as I do have something against Gwyneth Paltrow for numerous things, she hit it bang on as Pepper Potts throughout this entire cinematic universe. Oh, yeah. And then Incredible Hulk happened.
Moving on.
Like, what can I even say? Like, everything about this film was basically retconned. Come Avengers. Like, Mark Ruffalo pretty much replaced Edward Norton Liv Tyler was basically written out of the MCU entirely. Tim Roth, who played the main villain in Abomination, wasn't referenced again.
Yeah.
The only one who came back was the character of Colonel Thunderbolt Thaddeus Ross, and that wasn't until Phase 3.
Uh-huh.
And even then, they did not even mention this film once.
Wow.
Which I'm like, okay.
Huh.
But Robert Downey Jr. was at the end of the film. That ties the films together.
Oh, okay. So he was in that, and then there was a... Well, then they go straight into Iron Man 2, yeah?
Yeah, they go straight into Iron Man 2, which, actually, I didn't even mention. The MCU pretty much popularized the cliche use nowadays of post-credit scenes in films.
Yeah.
Like, they were the ones to popularize it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because they use it mainly to tie the films together into like the next installment or things like that, which for a narrative point is pretty smart.
Yeah, it
is incredibly smart.
Yeah,
because then you get a post-credit scene like at the end of Iron Man 2, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the biggest fan of Iron Man 2 for the most part.
I don't even remember it, so
I
do not even know if I've actually seen it.
This is This is a weird stigma with me with Iron Man 2, and anytime I tell this story to friends, they're like, what is wrong with you? But I'll say it right now, and then everybody in the world can judge me. Everybody who listens to this. Anytime that I watch Iron Man 2, I somehow start to fall asleep after the first third. And then wake up when the last third comes up. I can't even remember the middle of the film.
Despicable. No, I don't care.
I know. I try my best to try to pay attention through it, but I think mainly it was because it was Iron Man 2 for a time was played so much on TV, at the time, and my brain would just tune out.
Yeah.
But then again, I was also a growing young man, and at that point, I was just like, oh, explosions, explosions, give me more explosions.
Oh.
Like the typical dumb male brain aspect. I mean, it's a stereotype, but it's kind of true.
It's true for some. I myself am fond of a good explosion, but...
I love explosions with purpose.
But I also like to have them with purpose. I think I just came into that earlier.
Unless it's fireworks. I want explosions with purpose.
Yeah.
Understandable.
Yeah, I don't remember anything about Iron Man 2. I was about to look up, what plot...
it was the film that basically retconned the actor who played Colonel Rhodes. Because it was Terrence Howard in the first film, but thanks to a dispute between him and the studio, Don Cheadle eventually became Rhodey. Who I have to say, I love Don Cheadle as Rhodey. Him and Robert Downey Jr. play off each other incredibly well. They are... It's like the perfect bromance. Which just gets better and better with each passing year.
Yeah. Okay. Thor is next, right?
Mm-hmm. And they actually teased that movie pretty well because at the post-credit scene in Iron Man 2 was basically Phil Coulson, the agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. who became immensely popular in those films. Everybody loved him. Basically stumbling upon a crater in Nevada. In the middle of the crater was Mjolnir.
Yep.
And people were like, oh!
Yeah. Oh, so good.
Because that's
the soundtrack of that movie is one of my favorites.
Oh, Thor?
Thor.
Oh, yeah. Thor. All of Thor's films have incredible soundtracks. Yes.
Also, I am just a maniac for, Norse mythology and any kind of mythology, honestly, but I love it.
Oh, yeah. And it was kind of confusing, early on. It was okay, so is this actual Norse mythology stuff? Does it include, alien technology or stuff like that? This was still, the early building blocks of the MCU, so it's just, you have to, suspend disbelief, for introduction. But for the most part, these are basically the manifestations of what inspired Norse mythology on Earth.
Right.
In that universe.
Okay.
And then you have such amazing casting, like Chris Hemsworth as Thor. Great. I think he does...
I love it.
I think he does some of his better work in later films. But him coming off as rude, arrogant, and bombastic in this is so great. Of course, this is the film where Tom Hiddleston started to showcase Loki. Of course, he would become bigger come the Avengers, but you get those early shades of it, and it's just like
you know, I love a dark, brooding, pasty Englishman. You know I do.
Fair enough. I do appreciate it too. Oh, also Idris Elba as Heimdall, which I'm like,
Oh yeah.
Why is this man not James Bond? I would totally have it.
Oh, yes.
I would totally have Idris Elba as James Bond.
I want that.
Make it so. And then you got the legendary Anthony Hopkins portraying Odin, which he does really well in this film.
Yeah.
Later installments, you can kind of see he's not giving it his A game, but oh man, the scenes where he is imposing, I love it. And then this was really. It's one of the strangest out of the beginning of the MCU films, just because it's a little slower paced, but I kind of like it that way.
Yeah, I didn't mind.
It presents the fish out of water element with Thor being introduced to a world that he's not familiar with, and it's basically a growing up story. That's basically Thor's entire arc, throughout the films.
Yeah,
is him growing up to owning up to different stages and things.
Yeah. It's a very different person by the...
Oh, definitely.
By the end.
Definitely. And I'll get to those ones when we get we get to them.
Yeah. Okay. What's next?
Captain America: The First Avenger.
Okay.
I've talked with a lot of people about the first Captain America movie. People are split down the middle on it.
I liked it.
I love it too, but people are just like so taken out of the element just because it's like 1940s World War II, and I've heard some arguments say, well, why don't you just like modernize Captain America to do all that? Because I'm like, because that's not what Captain America is.
No, yeah, and that's kind of
for good or ill, the conceptualization of the character of Captain America was a product of the times.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I appreciated it.
But he has evolved with the times, but still remaining that same super soldier that got the serum in World War II. Still fighting Hydra, the German soldiers. I mean, the characterization of Bucky is majorly different, but I mean,
yeah.
Like for an adaptation, you have to balance it all out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But also, oh man.
Honestly, yeah, that and Winter Soldier, when, like, at that sort of stage of watching all the movies and stuff, like, there's stuff that I like better from later on in the MCU, but I really enjoyed those two. I think I watched them back to back.
Well, they came out pretty close to each other originally, so seeing them back to back is actually pretty good, because it's like night and day. And funny thing is, like, the ending of, like, the after credits ending of Thor actually does lead into First Avengers' main plot with the plot device of the Tesseract. Yeah. And Red Skull, Johann Schmidt actually does reference Odin's treasure room and everything like that, with the Tesseract being the main thing of it. And speaking of which, okay, you talk about some villains that are eye-grabbing and are great villains in the MCU. We talked about Loki and how he eventually came to be. Hugo Weaving as the Red Skull.
Hugo Weaving. I forgot he was in this.
Hugo Weaving is a treasure. I love that man to death.
Yes.
And, he was so great in his scenes in this film. It's just so captivating. Him with that weird, like, German-esque accent. Him combined with Toby Jones. Oh, I never knew I wanted that pairing, but now that I did, I'm glad I got it. Yeah. And then you've got some Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter, which love Peggy Carter. She was popular enough that she got her own spin-off series on television for a while until it got canceled. Thanks a lot, ABC. I want more Peggy Carter. I want it. But yeah, that's First Avenger is essential viewing because it leads directly into the plot for the Avengers. Yeah. And plus, like, in my opinion, I think out of all of the three originals of the MCU, Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man, Captain America might actually have the single best track record of, like, solo outings. Yeah.
You mean, like, their movies are consistently good?
Yeah, they're like their individual films compared to everyone else. Of course,
I've heard weird stuff about the second one, but like I saw it first, obviously.
We will get to that.
But
next
I mean,
episode.
I still watched the other ones. I enjoyed it well enough,
right?
You know,
this has always been my thing with like the MCU. There is no film that can be overlooked, even if it's not your cup of tea or in bad taste or it's just horrible. You can get something out of each film, despite pretty much the entirety of Incredible Hulk being decanonized. I still got a lot out of that, which still ties into the future of the MCU. There's actually plot points in the first Incredible Hulk film that actually ties back into Captain America: Civil War to an extent.
Oh my gosh!
To an extent.
It's been a while since I've watched a lot of these. I have to watch them in order or something.
See, this is why you have a super fan with you that
yeah, because I'm just kind of like, I have vague snatches of memory passing me by in the void.
In the void. And then from Captain America: First Avenger came the crossover that nobody thought could happen.
Uh-huh.
The Avengers. Now, this was... I gotta say, Joss Whedon really hit this out of the park. He has done several different projects before to both acclaim and to just slightly disappointment. Like, there is no in between with him. But honestly, I think the first Avengers film might just be the best thing he's made.
It's pretty good.
Like, in terms of character interaction, interplay between all... This was a big cast at the time, too.
Yeah.
Like, not foreseeing the future of how the MCU would turn out.
Yeah.
This was a huge cast. And you had to balance all of them, like, neatly, also considering the fact that you're introducing Mark Ruffalo as basically the new Hulk, which I have to say, he is... This might just be the best Hulk performance in the MCU.
He's pretty good.
Because Ruffalo's performance gets a little bit sillier down the line.
Yeah.
But the scene where he's first introduced, where he's talking with Black Widow, played by Scarlett Johansson. Oh, that scene is so good.
Right. Oh, because he's... Yeah, when she goes and finds him in, like, Sudan or something.
Yeah, he's basically in hiding. He's been a year without an incident. They need to bring him in because they need him to track the Tesseract that have been stolen. And he's basically trying to discern whether they need Bruce Banner or Hulk. And it's like a tightrope walk.
Yeah,
that they're
because
walking.
you gotta be careful.
And you can just see the fear in Natasha's eyes the entire time the conversation's going down.
Yeah.
To when he forces a freak out and he forces her to pull the gun, you can actually see her shaking. And I'm like, I didn't notice that at first, but when I was going through, like, some rewatches, like, leading up to this, and I'm like, that is good. That is so good.
I really enjoyed her intro as well, where, like, she's in some sort of abandoned factory, and these like criminals have her like tied up, and they're like interrogating her for information.
And Shield calls.
She got a phone call from somebody calling her in. And so like she has a conversation in English, so that the like criminals don't know what she's saying. But it's funny because she's the one who's like tied to a chair and they're interrogating her and stuff. She's like, "Stop! Don't interrupt me. These assholes are giving me everything."
The best part about that is that the leader actually understands English. He answered the phone for her, and he was about to demand ransom. And then Coulson on the other end is like, "We have this amount of missiles aimed at you already. So I suggest that you hand the phone to our tied up agent right now if you don't want to be sunk to the bottom of the depths." And I'm like, oh. and then that happened, and then she stops mid conversation to hand the phone back, beat everyone, and then continue the conversation like nothing happened. I'm like, okay, that is Black Widow.
Yep, like a Black Widow, baby.
That was a much better introduction than I think she got in Iron Man 2. Oh
yeah. See, I didn't even know she was in Iron Man 2. It's been that long.
Yeah,
and we don't know whether I've seen it or not.
Fair, understandable.
I gotta go watch it now and see if it looks at all familiar. Gosh.
And then
why am I doing this podcast with you?
because your energy is freaking. Your enthusiastic energy is infectious, and I do appreciate it.
Wow, thank you very much.
And also, you're just as much of a geek as I am in different spectrums.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I meant this episode in particular. I'm like, what day is it? Why am I here?
But yeah, all this leads up to the climactic battle in New York, in the final third of the film, and this film leads to several different plot points that leads on to the future of the MCU.
Yep.
Which we didn't even know was like if the future was even going to be possible. We thought this was going to be like the actual end game, no pun intended.
Wow, yeah.
Because we didn't even think about that. But then, during the end credits scene, we see one of the most important villains in Marvel canon, the Mad Titan, Thanos. And those that are actually fans of Marvel when they saw that in theaters, oh, the shockwaves that I heard in theaters when people were screaming.
Goodness.
And I think that's honestly like one of the best parts about seeing these films in theaters is that they've built such a lore and such hype around characters that when you hear audiences cheering for really fist-bumping moments, you're not annoyed by them. You're caught up in the moment.
Yeah. You want to know something funny?
What's up?
I've never actually seen Avengers 2, Age of Ultron. So when I went to see Infinity War, I've really had no idea who Thanos was. Like, I had seen him briefly in Guardians of the Galaxy.
You see that,
and then I was like, "Who is this guy? Oh, he's the BBEG. I got it. Okay."
you see, that's kind of the thing with like Thanos. Like, he was introduced in short little instances throughout the MCU. He never had a moment where he truly stood out until Infinity War happened, which I will get to that in time.
Oh, I'm alluding to later.
Yes.
But I'm not going to actually see. Because the closer we get to Phase 3, the more familiar I am with stuff.
Hannah, get ready, because once we get closer and closer to Phase 3, I'm going to go nuts. Okay. I'm literally going to go nuts. Oh, man. But
how are we doing?
We're doing pretty good. We're about a half an hour through.
Nice.
Pretty good. So, yeah, that was basically Phase 1. Like, it was this... It was kind of an experimental kind of time looking back, because...
Yeah.
It wasn't solidified yet, because Marvel wasn't under Disney's umbrella.
Right.
At that point. So, because I actually re-looked it up, Universal Studios actually worked with the Incredible Hulk film. So, there were multiple different studios handling everything and multiple different directors. I mean, the only constant director that came back for another one of those films was that Jon Favreau was the director for the Iron Man films. Mm-hmm. And so, to keep that, to keep those characters in that creative, like, input of the characterization that had already been established, but having these multiple different directors work on them, it's basically kind of like how television shows work with different people directing different episodes,
right?
But trying to keep that same kind of like characterization and full through going on it. But this is high budget Hollywood.
Yeah, and I think actually, Phase 1 from looking at it and from kind of trying to remember it, it seems like it was kind of like origin stories of our. Well, for the most part, origin stories of our main triad.
Right.
The Iron Man, Thor, Captain America. Just being like, okay, now you know who these guys are. And then do a big movie. And then kind of, like, dip back into that a little bit. And then also introduce some new people, you know.
Right. It was kind of formulaic, like, looking back on it now. But... at the time, we also got to remember, nothing to that extent had really been planned. At least to that extent.
Right.
And the fact that they got what they did out of it, like, already would have been great enough. But the fact that they continued on with it and created this cinematic universe that is so grand and epic that pretty much everybody nowadays wants to make their own cinematic universe because of Marvel's success.
Yeah.
I mean, Universal tried doing it with the monster movies to very little effect. DC is trying to do something with its multiple expanded universes and things like that, but at the same time, like, Marvel has captured a spark and magic of imagination of, like, years of planning ahead that is kind of unmatched.
Yeah.
Because it was soon after Avengers when the planning for Phase 2 began, and then partway through Phase 2, we got the news breakout of, like, what Marvel was planning for Phase 3, and found out that they basically planned, like, 5 to 6 years worth of films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we saw how far they were extending, and we saw things that were being brought up, we're like, oh my god, what?
Yeah.
You mad lads, what are you thinking?
You mad lads.
And then following that, we would see this expanding of the MCU onto television as well.
Yeah.
Like, the very first live television film they did was following the first Avengers was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. which they brought in Phil Coulson from, like, the MCU films to be, like, the main protagonist of that series. And it ran for quite a long time, and it actually ran in conjunction with the continuity of what was happening in the films. So it was kind of a rewarding experience. If you watched the television series, if you kept up with the continuity of it, it played together. So it was rewarding to know the timeline and canon. Mm-hmm. And it's basically kind of like a dream come true for fans of comic books that wanted to see these stories portrayed, but also carry continuity between films, kind of like how comic books retain continuity between different issues and different writers.
Yeah.
So it was a real kind of vindication that the first phase of the MCU was a main driving force into making comic book films big again. Well, as bigger, even bigger than what they were at their biggest before. So, yeah.
If we should end with like some kind of questions and answers thing.
Yeah, that
if you could have the powers of any of our three guys from Phase 1, what would it be?
Oh,
I know mine.
That's a good question. What would be yours?
Thor. I want to be able to call lightning.
Yeah.
Also, I really love the idea of being able to pick something up that no one else can. I don't know why.
You want to...
Or the idea of just like, yeah, well, besides, well, I'm not going to say anything, but...
No, that's fair. You know, actually considering, like, the character, anybody who can wield hammer has the power of Thor. Actually, in comics, Thor was actually a woman for a while.
What?
Yes.
The fuck?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
How? I mean, I don't mean to be
okay, so at a point, so in the comics, actually Thor, for a certain period of time, Thor wasn't actually from Asgard. Basically, you know how Odin said, whoever shall wield the power of this hammer shall be given the name of Thor.
Okay, yeah.
Basically, whoever had the power to wield the hammer was Thor.
Wow.
So there was a time where we had a Lady Thor.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
If you can find me an issue of that comic book,
I will do my damnedest.
Because that's amazing. Because yeah, like that actually, like lots of Viking warlords were women, so it makes sense.
Absolutely. Plus I could just imagine you just like with Mjolnir just going around like, yeah,
yes,
just spinning it around, going total on it. Just
that's okay. I don't need to be strong. I'm learning jujitsu.
Remind me not to make you mad.
Okay. Don't make me mad.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Now that we've got that.
I think I would probably be Iron Man. Definitely Iron Man.
The brains of Iron Man.
Like I just love the adaptability like he can get, especially like as he progresses through it, like of the different kinds of like suits and abilities that he can do and do like go on, go off. Like I love characters that are able to use like weaponry and technology as like their main kind of like power to an extent.
Yeah.
And as much as I love Captain America with his shield and how versatile he can be with his strength, Tony Stark basically has something prepared for every kind of scenario.
Yeah, he's a
jack of all trades.
Yeah, he is. He's a tinkerer. He's an artificer. I feel like if he was a D&D class, he would be an artificer.
Definitely. I mean, he basically. Actually, I don't want to draw too much in comics, but like I do have to say this because it does show up later on. Like he has also built contingency armors for different members of the Avengers in case things go rogue. Like the Hulk Buster, he has a Thor Buster. Like just in case like Mjolnir gets taken for the wrong reasons. And he also has an armor that uses alien matter that he can summon to him.
Oh yeah.
So yikes. I don't know. I just love having that versatility.
Like living armor.
Yeah, pretty much. Also,
ew.
also, I can say, can we just give some praise to Paul Bettany as like being the voice of Jarvis for a time? Like
Paul Bettany.
I know he was actually kind of a little dissatisfied just being a voice for so long, and we're gonna get into that like when we talk about Phase 2.
Yeah.
But oh my god, like Paul Bettany as Jarvis, like his voice is just so soothing, so reassuring, and so full of sarcastic wit when he's talking with Tony.
He's one of those guys who, that guy could read me the phone book any day.
I would definitely put him in top 10, if not top 5.
Top 10, yeah.
Like right up there with
Steve Buscemi, right?
I was gonna say Patrick Stewart, but
Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
Alan Rickman. Read me the phone book any day.
May he rest in peace.
May he rest in peace. Yes.
Indeed. Well, was there any moments for you that stood out in like Phase 1 from what you can remember that we haven't like touched on?
No. I have said everything.
I think we kind of did, actually, now that I think about it. Phase 1's pretty easy to fly by through.
Yep.
Because when we get to Phase 2, this is where things get a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it's mostly just like laying the foundation.
Yeah, Phase 1, if Phase 1 is laying the foundation, Phase 2 is more the building block process, and there are a lot of different things that go great and slightly go wrong with this.
Yeah.
But more about that next time.
Week.
But more about that next time. To be continued. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the General Geekery Podcast, the first edition of Marvel March Madness 2021.
Woo!
If you guys liked what you have listened to, make sure to follow us wherever podcasts can be found. We are on Spreaker, Spotify, and everywhere podcasts can be found. And if you guys do not have access to any of those services, check out the General Geekery Podcast on YouTube at Anime Rev Productions. That is youtube.com/Anime Rev Productions. Yep. Hannah, where can they check you out at?
Well, you can find me rolling dice with my party every Monday at 7:30 Central on twitch.tv/Loaded Dice Adventures. I play Petra, the Dragonborn Ranger Rogue, in a continuous homebrew campaign that takes place in the land of Avenaria. You could also find me on my other podcast that I do with my mom called SPLANCHNIC, where we talk about pretty much just all things geeky and nerdy, but from the perspective of two different generations. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can do so at Pythian Legume.
Excellent. And you guys can check me out on social media at Twitter and Instagram at RyuzakiMK7. I also have a Twitch channel under that same name, RyuzakiMK7 on Twitch. I play a multitude of different games. Most of them are RPG-based, but I always love interacting with my chat room, having lots of fun while doing it. And in fact, this past weekend, at the time of release of this podcast, I just had Hannah on there for our very first episode of Inepticon, where we have Hannah play games for the first time, seeing what she can do and seeing her reactions to it. Last weekend we played. We had her
elevators and chimneys. My nemesis.
last weekend we had her go through Super Mario 64. I will have the link to that entire stream in the description of this episode, so definitely go check that out. Hold on one second. I have to sneeze. Sorry, bless me.
May you be blessed.
Thank you. And also, guys, if you guys want to check out the podcast on social media, I actually forgot to mention this. You guys can check us out on Instagram at General Geekery and at Gen Geek Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. And if you guys want to support the show in any way, shape, or form, please, I would ask you to consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/General Geekery. all profits on there will go towards making the show better, as well as more content that we can provide for you guys, including special episodes, more Inepticon-esque streams, updates to software and things like that, and possible drawings from our artiste extraordinaire, Miss Hannah Kubiak.
Yes, hello. Yes, and shout out to the patrons, Brittany H. and Andrew K.
Thank you very much for supporting us. We greatly appreciate it, you guys. So, this has been our first installment of Marvel March Madness, MCU Phase 1, Episode 70 of the General Geekery Podcast. Until next time, for Hannah Kubiak, I'm Donald Kaczynski, and always remember, guys, to keep your geek on.
Always. Do you have a
Clink, clink.
Whoa, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Always. Clink, clink.
Bye, guys.
Bye. I don't know why I waved at the microphone like that.